The Story of Queen Esther. Gotten from the Book of Esther from chapters 1 to 10. Once upon a time, in the heart of the vast Persian Empire, there was a magnificent city called Susa. It was here that the grand King Xerxes reigned from his splendid palace. King Xerxes, a ruler known for his wealth and extravagant lifestyle, decided to display his vast riches and the glory of his kingdom. To this end, he hosted an opulent feast that lasted a full 180 days. The banquet was a spectacle of lavish food, exquisite wines, and dazzling entertainment, drawing nobles and officials from across the empire. As the feast drew to a close, King Xerxes held a 7-day banquet in the enclosed garden of the palace for all the people present in Susa, from the greatest to the least. The courtyard was adorned with white and blue linen hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings on marble pillars. There were couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and other costly stones. Drinks were served in golden goblets, each one different from the other, and the royal wine flowed freely, as befitting the king's generosity. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was high in spirits from the wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, to bring Queen Vashti before him. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command delivered by the eunuchs. This angered the king, and he consulted with his wise men, who understood the times and were closest to him, Karshena, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan. Memucan spoke up, suggesting that Queen Vashti's disobedience would set a bad precedent for the women in the kingdom, causing them to disrespect their husbands. To prevent this, Memucan advised that Vashti be removed as queen and her royal position be given to someone better than she. The king and his nobles were pleased with this advice, and the decree was proclaimed throughout the empire. After Vashti's removal, King Xerxes' anger subsided, but he missed his queen. His attendants proposed a search for beautiful young virgins for the king. Officers were appointed in every province to gather all the beautiful young women and bring them to the harem in the citadel of Susa, where they would be placed under the care of Haggai, the king's eunuch in charge of the women. Each young woman would undergo 12 months of beauty treatments, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. In the city of Susa lived a kind-hearted and lovely Jewish girl named Esther. She was an orphan, raised by her cousin Mordecai after her parents had passed away. Mordecai, wise and protective, advised Esther to keep her Jewish heritage a secret. Esther, whose Hebrew name was Hadassah, was taken to the palace along with many other young women. She quickly won the favor of Haggai, who provided her with beauty treatments and special food, assigned her 7 maids from the king's palace, and moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. She was taken to King Xerxes in the royal residence in the 10th month, the month of Teveth, in the 7th year of his reign. The king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality. Meanwhile, Mordecai, who loved to spend his time near the palace gates, uncovered a sinister plot. 2 of the king's officers, Bigthana and Teresh, were conspiring to assassinate King Xerxes. Mordecai immediately informed Esther, who in turn warned the king, giving credit to Mordecai. The conspirators were swiftly dealt with, and Mordecai's good deed was recorded in the royal chronicles, though he received no immediate reward. Not all was well in the kingdom. A man named Haman, an Agagite who was promoted to the highest position in the kingdom by the king, harbored a deep hatred for the Jews, especially Mordecai, who refused to bow to him. Furious, Haman devised a wicked plan to destroy all the Jews in the empire. He convinced King Xerxes to issue a decree that on a specific day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, all Jews, young and old, women and children, would be annihilated and their goods plundered. The decree was sealed with the king's signet ring and dispatched to every province. When Mordecai learned of this dreadful decree, he was devastated. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. He went as far as the king's gate, for no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Esther's brave decision. Mordecai sent word to Queen Esther, urging her to use her influence to save their people. Esther was initially frightened, for approaching the king without being summoned could mean death. But Mordecai's words resonated with her. Do not think that because you are in the king's house you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? With a resolve as strong as iron, Esther decided to act. She declared a fast and asked Mordecai and all the Jews in Susa to join her. After 3 days, adorned in her royal robes, Esther approached the king. To her relief, Xerxes extended his golden scepter to her, inviting her to speak. Instead of making her plea immediately, Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. At the banquet, the king, curious about Esther's request, asked her what she desired. Esther, with a calm and graceful demeanor, invited them to another banquet the following day, promising to reveal her request then. That night, the king couldn't sleep. As he read through the royal chronicles, he was reminded of Mordecai's loyalty and how he had saved his life. The next morning, King Xerxes asked Haman how to honor a man the king delighted in. Assuming the king meant to honor him, Haman suggested a grand parade with royal robes and a noble horse. To his shock and horror, Xerxes ordered Haman to honor Mordecai in this way. Haman had no choice but to obey, leading Mordecai through the city streets, proclaiming, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." At the second banquet, Esther finally revealed her request. She disclosed her Jewish heritage and exposed Haman's plot to annihilate her people. The king, enraged, stormed out into the palace garden. When he returned, he found Haman falling onto the couch where Esther was reclining, pleading for his life. This act sealed Haman's fate, and he was executed on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Although Haman was gone, the decree against the Jews still stood. Esther wept and pleaded with the king to save her people. King Xerxes allowed Mordecai to issue a new decree permitting the Jews to defend themselves. On the appointed day, the Jews triumphed over their enemies, and Mordecai was elevated to a high position in the kingdom. The Jewish people celebrated their deliverance with joy and feasting. This victory was commemorated with the festival of Purim, named after the lots, Purim, that Haman had cast to determine the day of their destruction. Esther's bravery, coupled with Mordecai's wisdom, turned a day of potential doom into one of triumph and joy. Her story is a timeless reminder of the courage needed to stand up. Tell us in the comments section what you learned from the story of Esther. Don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe if you learned something new today. Jesus loves you. Give your life to Christ today.